All right, the day is finally here. It is time for the full back from anodizing G6R kind of ground up rebuild here. So I will do this in one shot, and then at the end we'll air it up and see if this works here. So a couple of things that are different about this one. It does have there is a critical trigger involved in this, so this will be a pretty good resource if you've got a critical trigger you need to reassemble. But other than that, this is should be pretty standard, and let's hit it here. So for me, I start at the bottom and I work my way up. So that way, if you've got a leak, which you might, the leak's not going to be here because this is one static O-ring. It's not going to be here. It's like one static O-ring. It's not going to be here. Like everything in this whole zone is pretty, so if you have a leak, it's easier to troubleshoot. Like if you build the body first and then you build the whole thing, you air it up, it leaks, like you don't know where it's coming from, right? So this just kind of saves you a little bit of time, potentially. So start at the bottom, and then I kind of assemble the body last. So first things first, if you have, a 2K12 G6R, you can anodize the cam knobs. So this is the same cam knob as the Field 1 Force, so it is interchangeable. Field 1 and ANS, they used to sell like gloss black and dust black cam drive knobs, which is nice if you want to anodize, but even the nickel plated ones, most anodizers can strip those and you can anodize those. So, no problem. You don't need to keep your stuff. Oh no. Am I missing the screen bezel? What the heck? I'm looking through my parts here. We will have to get into that. I'm not. Alright. I was about to say, Steven over at Caustic, who I always use, I've yet to have him forget a part. So I was about to be shocked. Like, oh, I finally do a rebuild, and that's when he forgets a part. He did not. Same thing with these bezels. These are still aluminum underneath, so those can be anodized as well. So yeah, we'll start at the bottom. So I've probably been through this before, but the easiest way to assemble these, I will kind of show you here. These are detent springs. We've got a little ball bearing and a little spring we need to find here. So again, on my small list of things I would change about the G6R, the cam drive I think is a beautiful ASA because there's no visible screws, which I think is badass. I'd say, but if it was me, if I was in charge of the redesign, I would make it where the cam drive retention spring would be the same as a detent spring. Because if you put a detent spring in there, it'll bind. So, kind of a pain in the ass. Definitely a pain in the ass. But, c'est la vie. That's how it goes. I'm just pulling all my parts out here. So you gotta find that little spring here. Got a lot of detent springs. Got a lot of... I'm never going to find this thing. So I just kind of strip everything into the Field 1 bag. More detent springs. How many detent springs does one man need? Detent. Why is there 5 detent springs in here? This is crazy. Well, what I will do is now I will go into... Alright, I'll go into my bag of parts. So let's see. These springs, and that's what I'm saying, like I have so many detent springs. I wish that I wish they could just take a detent spring. Alright, I got one left in here. Jeez, getting low. So, anywho, here's our little ball bearing detent thing. We'll put these in here. All right. no spring and 2 ball bearings, so that's weird. Anyway, so put him over here. So this is how I start. You're going to want to make sure you have Dow 55, Dow 53. I also, and maybe this is a hot take, instead of Tri-Flow, I use this new, this diamond coat, which is insane. So much better than Tri-Flow. Better than the Planet Eclipse oil. And then I use gun salve. So I'm starting to use less and less gun salve, to be honest with you. The only O-ring I use it on is the Ram O-rings. I still kind of soak everything in Dow 33, but I kind of coat the inside of my surfaces. So it's kind of like a 55 gun salve mix. Anywho, setting up your cam drive is pretty easy. It's really just a few steps. So in here, you'll see there's, let me get my little pointer. In here, you see there's a little chamber right in there. You're going to take your spring, and some people, myself included, if you take your spring and you put a little lube on it and then put it in, it gives you something for your little ball bearing to stick to, so you don't lose that while you're assembling it. So, look at that. Now it's on there. So I put a little Dow 55 on that spring. You just set that little ball bearing right in there. Is this the correct bearing? It is. And then you're going to take your actual cam drive knob, and you'll see there's a little track that this ball bearing rides in. This is where the resting place of that ball bearing is. You can see there's a little ball bearing sized recession. You're going to take that so that the ball bearing is sitting in that spot. You're going to press it. Take your little retention screw. Fun fact, a grip frame screw can also work for that. So if you're in a pinch, you don't have this little button head, you can just use a grip frame screw. No problem. I hold it while I tighten, and then once it's tight, I go to this position and crank it down. There you go. And good to go. This portion is a little bit easier. Should have brought a paper towel. I did not. I'm a fool. Do I have any of my Q-tips in here? All right, gentlemen, we're using our shorts. So I apologize. I'm just wiping off these little brass components here, making sure they're nice and clean. I generally replace every O-ring on a G6R build. Really, except for the ASA ones. I just don't think it's necessary. Like, they're static. This is hugely oversized, as you can see, so I can tell already that that's not going to have any problem sealing. This one on the inside is only sealing against, this pin, so if you put it in and it's good to go, then you're good to go. So what I'll do, for me, I have a little pair of C-clip pullers, just because they're smooth. And what you're going to do is this side with the square, you can see that this is like a square and there's no O-ring over here. This is going to face your tank. So put it in this way, take some of my Dow 55, because this is just going to sit in there forever. This O-ring doesn't move, so let's just swell it to fuck. Take a little bit, put it on that O-ring on the inside here, because again, this is just going to ride on that little pin. Let's get it swollen as fuck. And then you don't want these two O-rings touching, so you can see on this little insert there's an O-ring in there, there's an O-ring in there. You don't want O-ring to O-ring, so put a little grease on there. Flat side to the O-ring. This is it fully assembled here, so you can put this in if you want as well. On the pin, the flat side is what is activating your tank. So this is your, right here, fully assembled ASA internals. Round side pointing towards the back, O-ring pointing towards the back, And then your activation pin is going this way. So you're going to take this and you're going to very carefully just ease it in, insert. Good to go. So now I'm going to push my pin, move it, make sure everything's good to go here. Let's see. Yep. So you might have to shimmy it a little in, but you know, you should have it disengaged and you can press the pin all the way flush and then re-engage and it pushes the pin. Like that's it. You're good to go. So now your ASA is complete. Like that, it's not going to leak. If it's leaking out of here, that means that the contact between the pin and the internals, something's gone awry there. One thing that can go awry is that if you are using a Field 1 Force pin, that is not the right dimension. It is subtly off. So it will, your tank won't disengage and it's going to leak out of the knob. That's the only leak point. So I don't think this is worth worrying about from a leak perspective. So we come in here, and there's two O-rings you can use here. You can use a 4x1 metric, which interesting choice. You know, that's Bob Long for you. I put a shit ton of lube on that. So you can do a 4x1 metric, or is it a 4.5x1? Sorry. 4.5x1. Do a 4.5x1 metric here. And that fits really nicely in there. Or you can just use, I think a number 6, maybe a number 4. Looks like a number 6. Or you can just put a standard number 6 in there. So the standard number 6 is a little bit fatter. Like if for whatever reason this is not sealing, just size up to a number 6 standard. But if you have the metric, why not? That's what it calls for. So I will play Bob Long's game here. That's another, if I was, you know, the G6r, these little tiny metric ones, I would have just made that bigger to just take a number 6. What's the benefit? Just have this channel a little bit deeper and just put a number 6 in there. Like, who cares? And then speaking of, you know, put a little... So you're going to have this set up. It's just going to seal pretty easily, which brings me to my actually number one least favorite thing about the G6r here. And I'm sorry, they're giving a building tour in my building. I'm in one of their co-working rooms. So naturally they have to stand right outside the door and fucking scream. So these are the, like, truly only weight-bearing, like, critical screws on this whole gun. It attaches the ASA to the frame. Why they decided to do like a modified machine head where they're like super shallow, like this should be the same as your body half screws. Like these take so much torque and they're so small, like it doesn't make any, like I see more fucking G6Rs with these stripped than fucking anything. Like you're gonna strip these. So like don't use a ball end, you know, just finger tight. You know, and then you want to make sure you're like locked in, and then just, if you feel it start to slipping at all, just fucking back off. Because once these are stripped, it's such a pain in the ass. So in G7R, because you got this space, you know, you got space. I see why, I know why they did it, because the battery sits right there. If it was these tall ones, you know, it would be really close to hitting the bottom of the battery. Who, you know, change the dimensions a little bit. This screw is not good. So, anywho, be very careful with these. Once these are stripped, like you have to get a little Dremel in there, cut them out. It's just a pain in the ass. So that's, I mean, that's your bottom line, right? So your air's traveling through the frame, coming out right there. One O-ring, sealing it there. You know, we're good to go. So we're done on that. I just go ahead and do this whole frame, to be honest with you. So. What I do next, if you remember my first video, you can kind of sneak this out. You can leave it attached I don't think you need to ever take the screen off in most cases here. So feed this through, feeling good. I do my 2 tiny board retention screws first. Let's retain our board so that the screen isn't flopping around. And again, as with all screws on the G6R, just finger tight. There's just, like on this, why are you cranking it? Like these tiny threads, they stress me out. Just don't crank them. There's no benefit. Why do these need to be gorilla tight? The answer, they don't. So you can just put it in like that. Your board's flopping around, feeling good. I'm gonna get my bezel. I'm gonna get my power button here. Here's another thing. Don't fucking lose this. You know, hopefully one day someone like 3D prints these or something, or Dirty Works gets them back in stock. But if you lose that button, like you're fucking shit out of luck. So here's flat side of this button. You'll see there's 2 sides. You want the flat side activating the button in the frame. And then this is actually kind of a little channel. So if you go like this, I'll show you the secret to putting on your screen bezel. Kind of use it to push down on the screen. And that's it. You're in. Ugh, my button got flipped while I was doing that. Alright, that's what I mean. It happens. You'll know it's not right. Flat side towards your board. Kind of press it down with the bezel. And then just, you're in. You're flush. Now you have 2 more of these little guys. And the reason, again, another Bob Longism. There's 100 different fucking little screws that are all the same thread, but they're all like different sizes. And they're all a little bit different. You can tell the 4 that are for the daughter board and for this bezel because the ones for your eye boards have a flat head. So these have a little machine head. You know, you can see here, these are pretty thick, little machine head. The ones that retain your board are a Phillips. Use the same screw. Why do this, Bob? The ones that retain your eye covers are the same thing, but they're long now, you know, because they go all the way in. And then the ones that retain your eye boards have a Phillips, you know, flat head as well, because the eye cover's kind of down on top. You don't have that much room. So again, 3 different fucking tiny screws to do the same thing. Say, Bob, you're killing me. All right, at this point I would put our board in. I route my cables like this, so I take it and I put it through the contacts like that, and then I kind of put it in just because I think it's a little bit cleaner. So that's how you can your wire through the contacts. Get my tiny screwdriver, and again, there's a couple Phillips head screws. The long ones are for the trigger switch, and the short one is for the back here. I just had that short guy. Where'd he go? All right, short one's here. And again, out of all the finger tight screws on the G6R, these are probably the most finger tight because there's just no reason to crank it down at all. You know, your board's not coming loose. It's not rattling around in there. And even if it is, you know, the only impact would be your micro switch. So these ones you can, it's that simple. Like you don't need to be putting torque on it. So I'll put this in here, connected. And then at this point, this is where I just test to make sure my screen's good, you know, board's good, everything's good, which it is. Great. So like your frame, like this is good to go. So at this point in the process, for me, I mean, we can do the triggers if you guys want. There's a couple little things for triggers that are interesting that we can do. So critical trigger does not take the standard G6R bearings. It takes like a huge like barrel bearing, which, you know, this is the critical one. And then, where is my G6R bearing? This I'll hold on to. Probably threw away my G6R bearings. So let me go to my bearing. I hope I have some. Grip screws. Oh, okay, so I got some bearings down here. These are the standard trigger bearings. So it effectively works out about the same, but that's why you can't get a critical trigger right now. Like if you go to Critical and try to buy one, you know, they're not selling them just because the place that they get source their bearings from, they don't have them anymore. So they're not shipping critical triggers, even though they have the triggers in stock, just not the bearings that you need. So, okay, so we'll go through both of those, and I'll show you my favorite trick here, which is when you get triggers back from anodizing, you can see these bearings just fall right out, right? A little too loose, you know, you lose a little material on the inside of there. So what you're going to do, and this is something I learned from the guy that did the, you know, the Saber and the Kodashi triggers. Cut a little piece of bag. You know, you probably have a piece of bag somewhere. Ziploc bag, right? And I will cut this even further. I used to just have little sheets of this on hand. Cut yourself a piece of bag. Put it over top. Force your bearings through it like this. You know, makes up a little bit of a space in there. You know, you've now coated your bearings in Ziploc bag, which makes them really hard to get in, and then, you know, you just trim your excess here. And voila. Now your bearings are installed. You know, it's easy. It's really just easy as that. You poke a little hole in there, you're good to go. I'm going to run the critical on this one, I think. That's actually easy enough. The question is, do I do a magnet mod on this critical? I don't think I will. So in that case, I'm just going to run it off of, I rarely run the spring anyway, to be honest with you. I actually probably need to do the bag on this one. Did I save a little piece of bag? Let's do it again. So I don't know if I have any magnets left to do a magnet mod on this trigger, but I'll show you how to do that just in case here, if you ever decide that's something you want to do. It's kind of cool. It's pretty easy. It's like one of those things that seems intimidating, you know, but it's really not. And I'll show you what I mean. All right. Well, there's that little piece. I knew I had it somewhere. And then just poke a little hole. Great. All right. Do I have my trigger internals? What is this? This is a trigger internal. Sure is. And I put a little Loctite on these. So if you ever buy a gun from me, you know, I apologize. It's set up exactly how I like it. And the screws are Loctited in, so they don't adjust or fall out or whatever, right? And then I went on McMaster and I bought a whole bunch of grub screws at different lengths that are nylon tipped for my adjustment, for my stop screws here. So I'm not going to do the magnet mod right now. Just not really interested. Oh, I've got it right here. Here's the magnet. So I'll put it in just because why not? But I don't think I have a little magnet to do show you where that magnet would go if I did have a magnet. And maybe one day I will have a magnet, and I will circle back and do this. What do I need to do? I'm looking to see if I have a magnet here. Please hold. I do. Wow. All right, boys. Let's get into it. All right, so what happens is on this, we need to see which side of it sticks to the magnet. So it sticks to this side. We're gonna take our Sharpie and we're going to put an X on the side we are not installing. So we are installing, the glue is going to be on the non-X. We'll set that aside. That trigger's good to go. I guess let me make sure that there's going to be enough clearance on this with that big ass fucking magnet. Is there? I think so. Seems like there should be. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So, all that you do, and I think I have a little thing of super glue in here. I do. So we're just going to take some super glue. Oh, fuck. Sorry, team. A little overzealous. All right. So, this little dugout right there. You see this? That's where usually your retaining spring kind of rides. We're going to put some glue on that. And then we're going to take our trigger and we're going to put our magnet there. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue. That's it. So you just kind of glue your magnet to that spot. That's it. Good to go. We will come back to that later on the install. And then on the critical, the actual magnet is attached to the adjustment screw, so nothing to do on that side. I will take a little bit of thread lock and we'll save that for later because I want to have it on the gun and see where I like the adjustment points here. Okay, so where do we leave off? Got the frame, trigger's all set up. Only other thing I'll do at this point, since I have the frame off, is take a little Dow 55, and this is the little top hat. So this is when you have, your G6R trigger in. This is your trigger retaining screw. As you can see, it's flat right here. That's where the bearing rides, and then it goes like this. And this little guy's embedded in your frame, and it smashes the trigger into these two stationary metal pieces. So that's how you don't get any slop. So you got to take this, and you've got to put it in your frame. It just kind of slides right in there. You can see it right in there. Don't forget this. It just sits right in there opposite of the board, so it goes in on this side. Big opening, goes in on the opposite side. It's a little bit proud of the frame, and that's what the bearings sit on. So put that in, just be done with it. Now I take this opportunity to do all these fucking screws. This is that 4x1 from earlier that I mistakenly said was for the ASA, so that's that 4x1. On your 2K11 G6Rs, this is the O-ring that used to have problems on. That has since been, fixed. And then this one I always have to double check. Yeah, so this is then a 14. And I'm telling you, like, a lot of times I forget this one and you air it up and it just starts fucking gushing. Yeah, I'm feeling looking good. Put that on there. And these are going to sit for a minute, so I just put a shit ton of fucking lube on them. And that can absorb that while we're waiting here. But your frame is basically done at this point. So you can kind of move through the process as you like. Generally, I would do the HPR now. I save the LPR because I want to be able to look in there and make sure that our valve spring is seated correctly once we get to that point. So let's go ahead and do our HPR. So another weirdo Bob Long O-ring is this 20 by 1.5 that goes on the inside up here. So there's a channel right at the top. We're going to throw that in there. Okay. And I'm just putting, you know, all of these things so far, these O-rings have been static and they don't even like get interacted with, especially this. You're never going to have to fucking touch that. So, you know, just put a bunch of Dow 55 on and leave it. This is a 12. This is a 12. This one also gets a fuck ton of lube. I want this to swell because, again, that's why, you know, that's why the G6R is what it is. You've got air crossing paths here. This is just an air transfer tube, basically. You got holes there, you got holes there, you know, you got a hole there, you got two holes in there. Like, you have air crossing itself. So this is not designed to be removed. Like, it is like factory, you know, monkey fucking tight. So I don't have the infrastructure ability to do that. So I put a little, just like on one thread of thread lock on there, just because you don't need to get in there. Truly. So don't. Quit fucking around at the top part here. No O-ring anywhere in here. So this is sealing, and then that big one is sealing. And then this just threads in. And then, you know, normally you would get yourself a strap wrench or something. You know, you could kind of go fucking crazy. I've got this little left coast tool that fits in there. And you can kind of crank that. Great. So that's it. You're good on that. Now, on the bottom of this, I believe this is an 18. So again, have a good seal on this. Like, sometimes if you don't have this O-ring in there, like, you won't realize it because things just kind of suck. So like this, like our HPR is good right now. I did pull out a fresh Schrader valve. I always do, you know, fresh Schraders on my rebuilds here. And this just simply screws into the bottom down there. And you just want to be very gentle. Like, this is another finger tight. I get it finger tight, and then you kind of grab the base and just like a little turn there. So that's, you know, feeling good on that. HPR is basically done. HPR body. I generally, if this is crazy, I don't know. I take some, you know, gun salve and I just kind of coat the inside of this just because it feels, you know, it's slicker, and this stuff has really incredible staying power. I'm still going to swell my O-rings, but I want it to ride on that gun salve just because it rides so nice. And then here is our actual, you know, Bellevue stack. You can see the O-rings are in a very specific order. So if you're ever curious, each, you know, they're concave. So you want it facing down, and then you create little pairs like this, and then the top one is facing up. So this is acting as a spring. This O-ring is just retention. It's not doing anything. You don't need to do anything with that. This is just dirty. I'm just going to clean it. But, you know, nothing is required on this per se. Like, this is just what it is. Some are blue, some are raw, some are different colors. Like, it doesn't matter on the color. So this is all what it is. And this doesn't, you know, do anything. It just sits in the bottom down there. So you can just put that in there. Now, your piston, this is like, I've really grown to respect this O-ring over time. And what I mean by that is, I believe this O-ring, our HPR piston, what is that, a 16? 16, yeah. Okay. So this O-ring, I used to try to get away with not putting Dow 55 on it. But it's like if this O-ring dries out, if it's not making a good seal, if you're running a low pressure tank, if you're running an SLP tank, like you're not going to realize, like you're just going to be going bottle pressure. Your gun's going to be like squeaking. You're going to be like, you know, like you're not going to realize all these things, but it's like it's just going to shoot like shit. And then you put on a pressure tester and your gauge goes all the way to like 300 PSI. So this piston outside HPR O-ring, critical. You know, just put a new O-ring on it. That's your maintenance. Wipe that off. I always put Dow 55 on it. I was trying to outsmart Bob. I used to put, you know, monkey poo. I used to just fuck around with greases to try to, you know, maybe it'll help my pressures if it's a little bit slicker in there. It does not fucking matter. Just put your Dow 55 in there. And then you are good to go on your HPR. We do have a little grubby in there. When I start off, I'll probably go like, not finger tight, but I mean, not flush, but just right when you feel some resistance, you can just stop. You know, nothing you really need to do on that. So like this is good. Your front end setup, feeling good. Let's see. At this point, what else can we do? I guess, you know, we can set up our feed neck. We can do that kind of stuff. Do I have those feed neck screws? I don't. Whatever. I guess let's put it together. Our LPR, we can put it together, but let's just not put it on the gun yet. So this is probably overkill as well, just because if you're using a reputable anodizer, your tolerances aren't going to change. And I'm just using my needle nose to grab it on the, you know, on the little fins here. Unscrew it. We'll take out our LPR Schrader. Again, I've got ourselves a new one here. Let's just do a fresh rebuild. All right. And we will put that back in. You don't want to crimp the stem. If you crimp that stem, you're going to be regretting it. You're not going to be having a good time. And these O-rings, these are all 14s. I never have any issues with these, right? Like these are pretty rock solid O-rings. You just got a lot of air going around. You got a lot of shit transferring around in here. So, you know, why not? Why not just replace them and get new O-rings? You know, sure. All right, so these are 14s. Let's get some 14s. And again, you can just grease these bad boys up because they're just going to sit in there. And just, you know, if it's not leaking, you can't overdo a static O-ring here. It's pretty aggressive Dow 55 usage. But, you know, you want these things slathered because they're fresh O-rings on a fresh rebuild. So that's about where I'd want it. As far as the inside of this, again, I'm going to go crazy. Put a little bit of gun salve on there. Mess around on the inside. And since this wasn't anodized, there's nothing really to change. This O-ring, you'll know if it's not working. And then, so I don't generally need to replace that. It's just riding on the same thing. This flat part is going to be going towards the top. This little indent, that's what hits on the stem on the Schrader here. So looking good. That's it. That's your whole fucking LPR rebuilt. One O-ring. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone's like, the LV2. You've seen how many O-rings and parts are on an LV2 LPR? It's crazy. Crazy town. I'll never understand it. As far as the LPR assembly itself, here's your, you know, nothing goes on in here. This is just, you know, again, you get that, you get your spring, and then you're going to take this, and again, it's reverse threaded. So just be fucking cool. It's reverse threaded. You don't need to crank this. You don't need to destroy your LPR assembly. I promise you, you're going to be okay. Don't destroy it. You can go finger tight on these things. I'm going to hold the body. I'm just going to crank it as hard as I can with holding it in my hand. That's all the harder it needs to be. Like, truly, I promise you, it's going to be okay. Put my screw in. You're good to go. LPR set. Ladies and gentlemen, then, I guess that kind of takes us into, the heart of this here. So, first thing I'm going to do is secure our body halves together. This is a huge leak point. This racetrack O-ring that goes between these body halves. Huge leak point on assembly. You know what I mean? Like day to day, it's not going to leak out of this racetrack at all. Just because you don't generally need to fuck with it. And it's worth the trade-off for me because there's no external grub screws. You know what I mean? Like the split body is badass and I love it. And Bob Long is a genius and I love it. The split body on the G6R is people love to talk shit. I think I even saw Jack Wood like, the body's split in half. I'm like, yeah, but it's so small. There's no external grub screws. Like, it's badass. And by doing that, there's no valve body. The valve just seals against the inside of the body. You can just you go in there and mill it, right? So badass. It reduces, like, the amount of dynamic O-rings in this gun is 1 in the HPR, 1 in the LPR, 2 on the RAM, 1 on the valve. I mean, I guess you could count the bolt O-rings as dynamic, but they just take a little grease. Like, that's it. You've got like 5 dynamic O-rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 dynamic O-rings. Sick. So badass. Got a lot of static O-rings, But, you put a lot of lube on that. We'll let that sit. We're going to take our body halves, and then we're going to pray to the Lord that we don't crimp it. You want to make sure it's seated in this channel. You put a little grease on there. We're going to be good to go. Now the question is, do I do black hardware or silver hardware? I'm going to do silver hardware. I just think it makes sense contextually for this gun here. We got a lot of black, so let's offset it with a little bit of silver. We'll give it a pop here. And again, I don't know, it's like your dad's never taught you guys how to tighten screws. Finger tight. Not even finger tight. Like as soon as there's any resistance at all, then I stop. So these are together, right? And then I'm just going to inch it. Tight a little bit there. Tight a little bit there. A little bit there. A little bit there. So our body, our halves are now good. So like you've got the majority of your G6R here. Now unfortunately, I'm a fucking idiot. And while I was doing that, I forgot to put in the valve and valve spring. So I will be undoing it. Don't be like me. I'm going too fast. That's why we start small and we go iterative. If anything, it gives this dowel a little bit more chance. That was kind of popped up. I'm glad we took it off. That was going to leak. That was popping out. All right. Now, on your valve stem, your poppet head, you're going to look. If it looks pretty good, then you're fine. If it is stainless, it is a low pressure poppet. If it is brass, it is a high pressure poppet. High pressure poppet is a little bit shorter than the low pressure, or should I say the low pressure. I would have flipped it, to be honest, if I was Bob Long. Like, I get why he didn't, but like these should have shipped with low pressure poppets, and then you could have billed it as, if you're a crazy efficiency guy, upgrade to this high efficiency poppet. You know what I mean? Like, I think you shouldn't. I don't think the softer shot and the lower pressure should have been an upgrade. It's kind of like that, I Am Pro kit. I mean, I get why he did it because it was just first. Like everyone was like, whatever. But that's how I would have done it, because people still would have got a high pressure poppet for the efficiency, just because it is pretty insane with the high pressure poppet. I mean, the most efficient paintball gun you know, is a G6R with a high pressure poppet. And, you know, the second most efficient paintball gun is a G6R with a low pressure poppet. I think it's worth the trade-off personally. But a lot of people will detach the head from the valve stem. I'll give you an idea here. This is the, you know, dirtbag low pressure poppet, the hillbilly poppet. You know, if you take a high pressure poppet and you screw the head off, which I don't want to do. Should I just put a new poppet head on this while I'm sitting here? Maybe, right? It looks pretty good though. I'm not going to fuck with it. Anyway, if you take the head off, you put that same valve stem O-ring between the head and the stem, and you screw it down as much as you can. It extends the head forward a little bit. It effectively gives you a low pressure poppet. You can't torque it quite as hard on the threads. Like, I've seen one back itself out. And, you know, if you damage the ceiling face on the inside of your body, like, you're fucked. So I don't play that game, to be honest with you. But, you know, if you want to, by all means. Second thing, I learned this from Jacob Salas. I think it's a good tip. When you get, you know, normally this is going to sit in the same position. It's going to kind of figure itself out. If you want to avoid airing it up and not leaking down the barrel right when you air it up, take something soft like a dowel and just like push on that poppet head a little bit. Just give it a little pressure, like push it into that body seal. You know, give it a little pressure. And then when you air it up, it won't leak, which I think is pretty nice. Put your valve spring on there. And then now we're going to put our body halves together. And we're going to look down here and make sure that our spring is seated on that little ledge right there, which it looks like it is. So we're feeling pretty good. Normally that I was, you know, getting ready to launch into my whole thing. Like, when it doesn't seat it, you know, do this. I never get it first shot. That's badass. So, you know, just, again, screw until they stop. And then just little torques. And then we're going to do our big torques. You know, this is not finger tight. This is leverage tight. You know, you don't want your body halves to separate. All right. So that's good. So now we are actually together, and then we can screw our LPR in. All right. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are making a fucking G6R here. So now you're going to be inclined to, like, you know, start jumping and doing other stuff. Let's see here. What are these O-rings? These are huge. Whatever. So now, I guess let's get the frame on there. We'll air it up. See how we did. So that brings us to the mission critical part, as Bob would say, installing the heart of the G6R here, this manifold, which is such a fucking beast of a manifold. It's like, you know, I'm going to do a review on the G6R versus, you know, the LV2 at some point, but are these twos? Are these 2x1s? No fucking way. These are 5s. Yeah. And it's like, I think the amount of trade-offs that the LV2 made just to not have an LPR sticking out the front, it was too many. Because it's like this body split, we can mill the channels into the body. Like, look at these air transfer channels. They're into the fucking body, baby. Like, look. You know? Can you even see this? I need to get more light in here. You know? Like, there's your air transfer channels. Right here. It's like into the body. There's no hoses. You know? Like, come on. And then, you know, your air is routed. We've got a little gasket on the solenoid, which is, again, this is the same solenoid they were using on the original Defiant, which was just in Indian Creek Designs, you know, B2K was a Bushmaster. They were all using these Humphrey noids. And it's like, have you ever had a Humphrey noid go down? Never. You know, like these planted eclipse guns in there, unreliable fucking solenoids that you can't rebuild. Like it's like, you know what's better than a solenoid that you don't have to rebuild is one that never fucking goes down ever. You know, these Humphrey-noids are rock solid, and it's like, yeah, they're larger from a physical form factor perspective, but you know, Bob figured it out, mount it fucking vertically. This is the only tubing, and that's to run to the back of the ram. And I bet you Bob could have fucking figured something out, you know, if he had enough time. I don't know. I like to imagine that, you know, he's banging on his desk, and I know it wasn't literally Bob Long that designed it, you know what I mean, before you want to be a fucking pendant in the comments. You know, it wasn't actually Bob Long that designed it, it was that other fucking guy, you know, whatever, you know what I mean. I forget his name, not John. I don't remember. So I'm putting these right here. So this is your, this lines up with your manifold here. So this is your valve actuation. This is your return. And then you've got a big one here that just kind of seals. I think this is a 13, maybe an 8. Yeah, it's a 13. All right. These ones are like, you install these wrong, it's like you just got leaks that sound like, you know, your noid's leaking, but it's not. Like these are crazy O-rings here. These I don't like. I'd say, Bob, I don't like these ones. I'd say, but it's not like you need to get in there all the time, so, you know, whatever. All right, a lot of Dow on there because, again, the expectation is you don't need to get in there and fuck around. Just let them sit and fucking Dow, 55, swell up, whatever, what have you. All right, make sure all your sealing surfaces are clean here. I put a little bit over here because this gets, I think, at number 8. Yeah, I don't like this O-ring either. I don't like this LP volume, like this valve plug O-ring here. I don't like this one. It's too small. Like these metric O-rings are so small, but like the trade-off is you get like such a thin, short, small marker. So I think it works. I mean, it's worth the trade-off. So now, and I only start to do this because 1, I always forget, and 2, I've got a pair of 4C eyes that I don't know if they're good or not. So it sucks to like, because this wiring under the manifold is so fucking hard. I hate to get it, you know, done up and then, you know, you do it and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna test this out. Let's see. Oh, no, so these are flipped. It also tells you which way your routing needs to go. So let's put our eyes in our body here, just as a little test, and see if these 4Cs work, because I don't want to be taking the frame off and redoing this. Like, I don't want to isolate variables later. Like, oh, is it the harness? Like, is it, you know, it's easy to diagnose these things off the gun. So let's see. 4C, okay. No problem, okay. So it's helpful to test things in this way, and then just make a mental note that, you know, you got 4 wires on the bottom here. So we can put these in like this. Do your eye wires first. You're gonna see why. Put your eye wires in, because this process is, and a lot of people don't know this. I've bought a lot of people's G6Rs that are fucked up, and they obviously did not know this. They've taken it apart. This right here is a routing channel for your wires, and they go underneath your manifold. Like, look, it has a little ledge. So like you're gonna go like this, and it sucks because they have to go above this portion and below a different portion. So it's like very hard to do, but right. Fuck me. You see what I mean? Because now you have to get these ones under this ledge, but over this. You have to do it all while you're trying to put this fucking manifold in. So I've got it there. And we are going to... Oh, fuck, my fucking O-ring came off. I did it, but I don't feel good about it. Fuck, I missed two. You see what I mean? Like, this shit's fucking crazy. All right, let's try it again. We're going to go in. We're going to go under. All under here. No. I'm so close. There it is. Got you, you fucker. All right, so we're in. You see what I mean? So you want the eyes to come around. Everything's being routed under this little shelf. It puts it out towards the back, so where it goes down your frame. Like, there's your installed manifold. Pain in the ass. But, you know, there's ne'er a smaller gun than a G6R. So, you know what? I will take it. And these guys, you're gonna think that since these are securing the manifold, which is very important, that you need to go crazy tight on these. You don't. You can run a G6R without this screw in at all. So, finger tight. I'm telling you. You have to believe me. Stop stripping these fucking tiny ass screws. It's just finger tight. I promise it's gonna be okay. That's it. That's all the higher I'm gonna tighten them. Like, you're watching me do it. That's it. Boop. Boop. Just finger tight. Feeling good. Great. Got that. Got that. Got that. Got that. Now it brings us to this part. So on a G6R, you got your air coming in here, goes into this manifold. You're gonna have pressure go to the front, put pressure in front of this ram. You know, it's holding it back. When you pull the trigger, air is gonna come through here, comes through this hose, comes out of this hole, comes out of this hole right here, comes out of this hole, and that's why this O-ring on your back ram cap is so fucking important. This creates a seal because that volume of air pushes your ram forward, right? So this is very important. That seal is very important. You know, in this little brass thing, you want to make sure everything is just sealed real nicely. So I'm going to take this, put this under here, take this little brass guy, we're going to stick it in there. Take a little O-ring and just kind of, sorry, not O-ring, Allen wrench, push it in. And then I take a second one and kind of just like push. If you have like, because if this, here's another thing, like if this hose is kinked, if it has a crack, if it's old, that's why your G6R is shooting 260 feet per second. So like if this is cracked, if this isn't seated correctly on that brass thing, if this is like poking out a little bit, if this isn't correct, like all of these things are just going to impact, getting that to that 260. So at this point, let's fucking do it, boys and girls. Let's put that frame on. So let's go ahead and put our frame on. Get your little rat tails through there. Push those through. And you just want to remember that little top hat that we installed. You don't want that to fall out. Be cognizant of that. Because we've got the frame where it is now. That's why we put a little lube on it. You know what I mean? Because it's so fucking hard to put in after your frame's already installed. I would not recommend it. Just very steady. And that's why it's like, you know, people are like, oh, pinching wires on a G6R. There's nothing to pinch. If you ran the channels correctly, if you installed your manifold correctly, these go on the back of the solenoid. This comes up front. And like, look at that. It just goes right on there. Nothing to pinch. Not a care in the fucking world. So, yeah, we're feeling good. I mean, I still double check. Yeah, looking good. Okay. So now let's put our frame screws on. Let's put in that big dog on the inside here. Crazy, crazy fucking Bob Long. You're wild for this screw, Bob Long. And you can do these like, not finger tight, but you know, loose tight, as they call it. Just because, you know, again, we're probably gonna have to take this frame off. It's probably gonna leak. I hope not. But now this guy, it's a 15 by 1, which generally I find to be insufficient. So in those instances, I have a little bag of 14 by 1.2s, which are a little bit smaller than 15s. So they stretch them, which gets them a little thinner, but then they're 1.2s instead of 1. So they're still a little bit thicker. If I could find a 15 by 1.1, that would be a dream. This is as close as I could get. And you can see that they're a little bit more robust. If you're looking for it, 14 by 1.2. And I think they're just a little bit more robust because that's such a critical seal. Like, again, on my G7R, that shit would be fucking different. That would be a different fucking O-ring, 100%. So I'm just going to change my Ram O-rings here. What's our back of a Ram? Is it an 8? Is it a 6? Yeah, it's a 6. Okay. That's not true. It can't be a 6. Ram rear's an 11. Yeah. Okay. I'll get an 11 here. And again, I'm gonna put down on everything just because I don't know yet. It's like kind of better safe than sorry. And you know, as these things break in anyway, you put some shots through it, these O-rings are gonna get worn down anyway. You know, it's truly no big deal. So I'm gonna put some gun salve on top of this here. Drop that in. Okay, it's not just dropping in, which if it just drops in, you know what I mean? Like that's, okay, feeling good about that, to be honest with you. And then this, see that? Yeah, if I would have put a fucking 15 on there, that'd be way too loose. You should have to force that in. All right, ladies and germs, moment of truth. Let's see how we did. All right, feeling pretty good. Let's air it up, see how we did. Okay, so we're leaking out the valve hole, which is again that thing where new poppets are going to do that. Also, our LPR pressure is very low, which, you know, sometimes that's going to do it. Let's increase our pressures a little bit here. And we're good. You know, if your pressures are too low, things aren't going to seal, but bleeds. Let's put that ram forward and see if it recocks. Good to go. So, you know, again, same thing if, you know, if your LPR is too low, It's not going to seal. Let's put on a pressure tester and just put it at, 70, 180. See if it holds at those pressures. That's kind of a good starting point. I'm using Jared Bushman's tester here. Really like these a lot. He's got your standard pressures, 185 and 80, which is crazy. If your G6R LPR pressure is at 85, you need to read a book. So let's get our pressures where we want them here. Okay, so we have LPR at 75, HPR, oh, mama, that's pretty high. We're at 210. We can drop that a little bit. 200. 175, so we can go a little bit higher. All right, and that is, like I said, first air up. Pressures are good. As you can hear, no leaks. Feeling pretty good. So the most common leaks you're going to get are, one, if you air it up with your regs, if you have a little bit of HPR pressure, which if you have one of those blue shim stacks, as soon as you screw that screw in, it's giving it some pressure. So if you have like a raw one or like one of the other colored ones, the adjustment screw range is a lot different. On those blue ones, the second that they're even in a little bit, you're at like 150 psi on your HPR. So if you do that and then you have your LPR back down, as soon as you air it up, there's just not enough pressure to like hold the valve. You're gonna leak a little bit, which whatever. So you can either set your pressures. I try to zero everything out, air it up, because if it leaks with no HPR and LPR pressure, you have an O-ring blown somewhere else. But that valve leak is a really common one. Body half leak is a really common one. If you have that happen, since the rest of this isn't done, you can just take out these 3 screws, take your front half off and reseat that O-ring then. So that's very easy. So now let's move on to our eyes and all that stuff. Make sure these are clean. And again, since we measure them out, no twisted wires, nothing fucking weird. The eye retention screw is the top one. That's it. And then I use, and this is a hot take, so Dirty Works has a set of detents they call the Super Ds, which, marketing hype aside, I think are just absolutely fantastic detents. Oh my God, would you believe that fucking ASA O-ring, that ASA spring, it's in my detent spring. You fucker. Wow. I knew that thing was in there somewhere. So I have, these springs all get messed up. So this I'm going to definitely save. So here are, where did that other one go? I'm losing my mind. Really? So here are the Super Detent springs, as you can see. Here is a normal detent spring. The core, look at the, it's really nice because even though the sizes are the same, one, the Super Ds are made out of a really high strength plastic, and the surface area is much higher that the spring is acting on. So it's just, it's better for brittle paint. The detents are going to last a little bit longer. Like, look at the spring in each detent, like the stock detents, it just sits right in the middle. you know, it can move along that kind of axis there versus the super detent. You know, it's a no-brainer. I think it's a really nice detent. I think it's only like $5 for a set because, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, it is a detent. I get it. But I think they're really nice and I like them a lot. So I put them on everything here. That's just me. It doesn't super matter. You know, it's not like the other detents don't work, you know, but I just think it's nice to have these nice detents here. I really like the Super Ds. And, you know, someone's probably asking, Nick, you can't even shoot a paintball gun fast enough to warrant 4 CIs. And even if you could, ball in place delay, you know, exists. Why would you use 4 CIs? I'd say because I want to, because they rock. You know, you guys are too ungrateful. Why would I spend money on a nice paintball gun? I can just get a EMAC and a case of paint. Like, because cool stuff is cool. It's cool to have cool stuff. You know, like, just not everything needs to be this race to, like, be frugal and save money. Like, you know, some dude invented 4 CIs just for paintball, and, like, that's cool. You know, like, that's all it needs to be. You know, 4 CIs are fucking badass. Plus, you know, okay, yeah. Let's see. Perfect. All right, 4-seater working. Great. Let's do our feed neck shit now. Actually, I will do one more thing on this while I'm here. So I really like these Cush bolts. As you can see, I've been using them pretty significantly, I'd say, but I really like the LV2 and the CS3 bolt tip inserts. I think it's just, you know, unfortunately, I think the LV2 is fucking dumb, I'd say, but, you know, Jack has been doing a lot of R&D on, you know, stacked tube poppets for the past couple of years, for the past decade, while old Bob has not. You know what I mean? He's got the slow-mo cams. He's got the shit in the lab. You know, like, they've got a lot of, you know, everybody was doing Venturi faces and shit for a while there. You know what I mean? And I don't think the pillow bolt is robust enough. I don't think it's a good system. I think you blow pillows out. It's not a good system. I don't like it. So, no problem. I'm going to put a little bit of this on here. Let's see how this bolt fits. We'll go through bolt O-rings here. Oh, that's nice. See, like, it doesn't, you know, it's not going to just, like, fall out. Like, that's awesome. So, because I am an edgelord, I'm using a thumb drive bolt without the thumb drive part on a tech bolt, so it's completely no pro. I mean, I don't like it on Texas Storms and F5s when you see the thumb drive part out the back. So truly the best of both worlds. You know, like, that's the move right there. You know, at the end of the day, just screw in there, pop your bolt pin, whatever. Who cares? It's all about the aesthetics. It looks great. So this is pretty good. This is pretty much done. Let's do this trigger stuff, and then let's you know, let's finish it up. So first of all, let me find my little trigger. I know I was using that to illustrate a point here at one point. Little trigger thing. There it is. Okay. Well, I got a little bit of plastic left on here. Great. Okay. Perfecto. All right. So let's see if I fucked anything up with this this magnet. I have not. Looks great. So I need to figure out where I need to set all my returns so that I can Loctite these. That is my goal here. So that's a pretty long way off. A little bit more click. God, it's a lot of fucking travel. That feels pretty good. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. Actually, I probably need a little bit more spring back. Sorry, this is like just personal preference. Okay, that's probably good. So now I you know, the reason I do this is because now when I pull this back out, I know where I need to Loctite my adjustments, because I don't want this shit. I don't like this when this stuff backs out, you know, like it's about one thread, about two threads. So let's screw this out. A little Loctite on there.